All right, good morning, class. You're welcome to a new day. I have to make this video this morning because I could not find the last video, the lesson of yesterday. I could not find, so I decided to make a quick one for this video to be like a guide for those of us who were not able to make it to the class yesterday for whatsoever reason. And I'll quickly go through everything we have done so far. We started from the installation process of the Python program, and that is actually like the number one thing we had to do to ensure that we had Python running on our phones and gadgets as well. So after the installation, we started off with understanding the environment, and I told us that you can install, the first thing you have to do is to install the Python into your computer system, and you can also have your IDEs installed in your computer system, and that will be like a background for you to actually write your codes and also have your codes executed within the IDE. And I was able to show us a typical example of an IDE. The one I'm using here in my system is called the PyCharm. The PyCharm IDE, and apart from the PyCharm IDE, there are so many other IDEs. And I told us the meaning of the IDE. The IDE simply means Integrated Development Environment. So there are so many IDEs actually available for us globally. You have the PyCharm. Apart from the PyCharm I'm using, you have the Atom IDE. Then also you have the Jupyter Notebook. Okay. Then you have the Tony IDE. So there are so many IDEs you can browse up, but then IDEs that must be compatible with your Python program. So any of these IDEs, you can actually lay your hands on them, study the environment, and use them. So your Python codes are actually written on the IDEs, and you also have them executed on the IDEs. Yes. So I showed us practically a typical example of an IDE. Like what we have here right now is a very good example of my IDE. And like I said, the IDE I'm using is PyCharm. So we have been able to write our first program. The Hello Nigeria program, where I said country. Equals to, in quotes, I said hello Nigeria. So this was the first program we wrote for those of us who were not here. And for me to have this program executed, I will use my print function. I will tap my print function, then I'll have a parenthesis immediately after my print function. Then inside the parenthesis, I will have the variable country inside the parenthesis. Okay, so that's what we have there. And I want to say that when you're typing in your variable, you don't need to have it in quotes. Variables are not always in quotes. The only things you have in quotes are strings. We're coming to that. I'm going to explain that later on. So for me to have this executed, I will just go to my top right corner. I'm going to see a triangle, green triangle there. I will just click on it and wait for it. Then my program will be executed. Hello Nigeria is printed out. That was our first program, and this is the process for you to run every code you want to write. You can write and run all your codes in this format as well. So, and after this, we went through a whole lot of other things. We talked about identifiers. And also we talked about keywords in Python. And we said identifiers are actually names given to entities, names given to functions and all that. Like for instance, here now, you can say country here is actually an identifier. Okay, country is an identifier. Then also, keywords, we talked about keywords as well, and I say keywords are actually reserved words in Python. Okay, they are reserved words in Python, and keywords cannot be used as identifiers. And if I decide to change this variable country to a keyword in Python. I told us there are over 33 keywords in Python, and if I decide to pick one of them, none is one of the keyword. The word none is one of the keyword. If I type in none there, and then I come into this parenthesis and also enter the same, I also type in none in the parenthesis here, definitely I should expect an error message. If I run the program, it's going to send me an error message, as you can see, and the error message is called syntax error. And from the explanation, the description has it that it cannot assign to, you cannot assign none. That means none cannot be used as identifier. And the reason is because none is a reserved word in Python. A none is a reserved word in Python. That's why we cannot use it as an identifier. Okay? We cannot use none as an identifier. So that is just it. So now going on, we also, like I said, we talked about keywords. Keywords are actually inbuilt. They've been actually built in as modules into Python. Okay, they've been built in as modules into Python program, and you can actually use them. You can use. Okay, so all right. So the next thing we also talked about there was Python statements, indentation, and comments. Okay, we talked about Python statements, indentation, and comment, and I talked about various type of statements we can actually find in Python program and how the statements are presented. I'm going to just go through them quickly. And the first type of statement we have in Python there is what we call assignment statements. Assignment statements is the first type of statements, and assignment statements are statements of the sort. I can just say name, okay, equals to, in quotes, Benjamin. Name equals to, in quote, Benjamin. This is an assignment statement, and it simply means that Benjamin has been assigned to the variable name, and it's actually a way of saving. Benjamin has been saved in the variable name, and once name is printed out, Benjamin will actually be executed, and Benjamin will be given out as the output. So this is a very good example of the assignment statement. And apart from the assignment statement, we have the conditional statements that begins with if, where you say, for instance, you can just say if name. You can say if name. Now I'm making reference to the first assignment statement. So if name, okay, is equals to Benjamin. Okay. If name is equals to Benjamin, I'll put that Benjamin in quotes, and I'll make sure that every character I'm going to follow the if the character is in uppercase, I'm going to make sure I maintain uppercase. Lowercase characters also will be followed as well. So Benjamin. If name is equals to Benjamin, that's a conditional statement. Okay. So this is a conditional statement. So now the other kind of statements have the print statements. So I'm going to also include print statement here. So if name equals to Benjamin, prints. Print statements, and it's a statement of execution actually. Maybe you want to execute your program. It actually helps to execute your program. So when prints is actually activated, it means that you want that program to be executed at that time, at that point. So prints in parentheses, okay, print name. All right. So now this is the print statement. So these are just three types of statement. There are many others. I'm also going to explain that. So the first one we have is actually the assignment statement, where an entity has been assigned to a variable, and in this case we have conditional statements that begins with our if, and each time you have a conditional statement like this, there must be a colon. Okay, there must be a colon. Then also you have your print statements, the statement of execution. If I run this program, I'm going to run this program to see what the outcome will be. Okay, I just ran the program, and that is my outcome there. It's giving me a zero code. A zero code means the program was actually executed, but maybe something is wrong. So if I decide to change this to a number, okay, if I decide to change this to 5, okay, let me say this is 5, then I change this to 5 as well. Okay, then I say print name. 5 will be printed out. Okay, so the first case I use the string. So a string is just like an English write-up. When you're writing your text, okay, it's called string. But in this case now, I decide to use an integer. So the outcome has been printed out successfully. But these are actually statements. What we have here as well is an assignment statement. This is an if statement, and also this is a print statement. So apart from this, we have the for statements. Okay, the for statement, I can say for. Okay, I can say for I in range. Okay, I can say range 1, 11. Okay, so this is what we call a for statement. Okay, the for statement is actually a statement of iteration. Maybe you want a number to be printed, or a list of numbers to be printed. I said for I in the range of numbers between 1 to 10. When you give Python this range, it doesn't print the last number. It will print that number from 1 to 10. If I use my print statement to execute this, print I. Don't worry, we're going to go over this as we progress in our lesson. If I say print I and I run the program, it should give me a list of numbers from 1 to 10. Okay, yes, so it's giving me numbers from 1 to 10. You can see it there. Okay, number 1 to 10. That's what I'm having there. So for you to have such a list of numbers, you can use your for statements, or you call it a for loop. Okay, this is actually an iteration statement that prints out numbers. But apart from that, also you have the while statement. Okay, the while statement is also a loop. You can say if you say x is equals to 8, and then you say while x, okay, while x is less than 10, is less than 10, okay, it's less than 10, then you say print, okay, say print, while x is less than 10, then you can just say print x, okay, print x. Right, while x is less than 10, print x. So I'll just run the code. So it's printing it. So this is what we call an infinite loop. So this continues till your battery runs down. That means it doesn't stop. It's an infinite loop. Okay, it's an infinite loop until you give the condition to stop. Okay, so these are actually the type of statements we have. I'm going to stop this loop. These are the type of statements we have in our Python. Okay, now the next thing we're going to look at, is the indentation in Python program. Okay, so the very simple way of explaining indentation is by kind of telling us that indentation simply means spacing. Okay, like you're typing your Microsoft Word, you have what you call line spacing. So line spacing is something as indentation. Okay, so in Python program, I would like you to know that we have what we call block of codes. Block of codes always begins with functions. Okay, it begins with functions, and for instance, if I said if, I can just say, okay, t is equals to 10. Okay, and now I introduce an if function. I said if t, okay, is greater than, well, if t is equal to 10, if t equals to 10, then I introduce my column. The moment I click on my enter button, automatically the next line will be indented. Okay, now there are some programs that you'll be expected to do the indentation yourself, meaning that it is not automatically programmed to indent this way. You need to understand the principles behind Python indentation. Now the principle is this. I'll go back from the start point. So from this start point, the indentation, the convention is that you must go 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. After a function has been defined, this is a function, this is an if function. We have the for function, we have the while, we have so many of them. So once a function has been defined, the next line of code must be indented 4 spaces from the start point of that particular function, not from the start point of the line. Okay, so I can say the next thing is going to be my print function. Print, okay, t. So these have been indented. So from the start point of this place where the if function started to where my print function is, there are 4 spaces. 4 spaces. We call it white space. That is what we call Python indentation. Okay, so it's very, very important you understand how indentations work in Python program. Okay, it's very, very important that you understand how indentation work in Python program. And the next thing we're also going to look at is the Python comments. Okay, so I'm actually giving you a few tips, and these are things we're going to be applying as we progress in our lesson, in our Python lesson. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is Python comments. Python comments. Okay, comment in a Python program is actually used to kind of specify or give a little description or a kind of provide a little information about what you are doing, the program you're running, and all that. And comments in Python always begins with the hash sign. Okay, so in this case I may just write a comment to say a simple program, program to find the value of t. Okay, of t. Now, if I pick up this program in the next, if I revisit this program in the next, let's say in the next 5 years, okay, I should be able to understand by looking at my comment there. I should be able to understand. I can add other comments. You can have other comments added as well. You can say, kind of begin. Okay, begin with an assignment statement. Assignment statement. Okay. Okay, statements. Okay, you can add more comments. All right. You can add more. You can say introduce an if function, if conditional function, if conditional function. Okay, you can add as much comments. So this is actually giving me a lead, and it's a kind of giving me step-by-step process in the execution of this code. So comments are very, very okay. And another thing you need to understand about the comment, you might be thinking, are you sure this is not going to affect my code? No, comment is not part of the code. The moment you begin in the write up in the code, the environment with an # sign, automatically the code, it is totally ignored. Okay, it's actually practically ignored. So that is another thing you need to understand. So it is not part of the code. Okay, so that is just it about comment, and that's just it. So I am going to just say one or two things, because the last time I was telling us that to choose your identifiers in Python program, there are some things you need to observe which are very, very important. Number one, and you need to understand that your identifiers can be a combination of uppercase letters or lowercase or numbers between 0 to 9. Okay, and also you must not use special characters when you're choosing your identifiers. It's very, very important. Special characters should not be used as identifiers. Okay, and also identifiers must not begin with numbers or integers. Okay, you must not begin your identifiers with a number. For instance, you said one country. Okay, one country equals to say Lagos. Okay, Lagos. Okay, so if you print this, it's going to give you an error. So if I say print one country, okay, and run the code. If I print this and run the code, it's going to give me an error, and it's called a syntax error. Syntax error because it is unconventional for you to have an integer, okay, or begin your identifier with an integer. It is wrong. So if I take this out and run the code again, it's going to give me the output Lagos. Okay, so as much as possible, you must not use your identifier must not begin with numbers. It's very, very important you understand this. Okay, so that's you should take note of that. And you can use the underscore. You can, first of all, if you want to choose an identifier, it must be a reasonable identifier. Your identifier should be able to tell you or give you a very fair idea of what you're even doing, the code you're writing. Like I said, country, and I said Lagos. I think this talks about city and locations. So you can see that it's actually reasonable. So your identifier should be able to relate to what you're talking about. If you're talking about students, you can use class. You can use anything that relates to students. So these are a few things you need to understand in choosing your identifier. Like I said, special characters are not allowed in, cannot be used as identifiers. You cannot use special characters as identifiers. Yes. So also, another thing I want to talk about here is what we call the Python numbers. Okay. You need to understand how the Python number system works. Okay, the Python number system. Okay, so we have what we call the Python number system. Okay, Python numbers. Okay, all right. So now, in Python we have what we call the integers. We call it ints. Okay, then we have float. Okay, we have the floats. Okay, then we have I'm going to introduce, okay, basically the ints and the floats. The int actually talks about whole numbers, which is the integers, and then the float talks about decimal numbers. All right, so in Python program, you use your ints to represent integers. Then you have float. When you hear floats, we're talking about decimal numbers. Okay, so the int, you're talking about numbers like 1 to 9, as long as they are whole numbers, 1 to as many whole numbers as you can count. Then in case of floats, numbers with decimals are called floats. Then another thing you need to know as well in Python program, we have the strings. we have what we call the strings. Okay, now strings actually defines everything that has to do with texts, I mean write-ups. Okay, general write-ups in English language are called texts. In Python program, they are recognized as strings. For instance, you have a letter you want to analyze, or you have the name of a country, the name of a person, the name of a place, the name of people, and all that. They are all called strings. And another thing you must know is that strings must be in quotes when you write them. Okay, so strings, okay, are always in quotes. Okay, always in quotes. Okay, otherwise, the syntax error message will be sent back. Syntax error message. Okay, will be sent back. So it's important we take note of the strings are always in quotes, otherwise the syntax error message will be sent back. So let's be a understand. For instance, if I want to say country, and please, that doesn't mean that the only thing that's not in quotes is my variable. If I say country, okay, if I say country, okay, if I say notes, okay, I say this equals to now, I must put the next time I'm going to write in quotes. Okay, now I can say, okay, I say, okay, today it's gonna be a very, okay, special day for everyone, okay, for everyone in this class. Okay, so now I have the string, but you notice I have it in quotes. I have the string in quotes. So I can actually take this. If I'm writing this on my IDE, if I'm writing the string on my IDE, my notes is not in quotes. The reason is because this is the identifier. Okay, but my string is in quotes. Today is going to be a very special day for everyone in this class. So the string is in quotes. So this is very, very important for us to understand. It's actually in quotes, so let's bear that in mind as well. Alright, so that is just the basic thing that we need to know about the string. Okay, so we have what we call the Python lists. Okay, the list. So a list is actually enclosed in a square brackets. The Python lists, in Python lists you enclose items in a square brackets. Alright, so I can say names equals to, it must be in a square brackets, and then every single item I'm putting in there are going to be in quotes as well. I can say John in quotes. I'll put a comma as well. Okay, then I'll open under quotes, then I'll say Daniel. Okay, in quotes, a comma will follow, then I'll open another quote as well, then I'll say Sarah. Okay, in quotes, it continues that way. This is what we call a Python list. Python lists are always in quotes. Please, let's bear that in mind. Then we have the Python sets. Okay, Python sets. Please, this is a list. This is a good example of Python list. Okay, Python list. Okay, so this is the Python list. Okay. All right. So now also have what we call Python sets. Python sets. Okay, Python set is written this way. I can also say name equals to the same thing I have there, but you'll notice something different now. Now I'm beginning with the curly brackets. Beginning with the curly brackets, I'm going to have the same names I have there. I'm going to have everything I have. I don't know if I can copy. Okay, since I cannot copy that, sorry. Sorry. So since I cannot copy that, I'll just repeat the list again, but this time we would have name equals to curly brackets. I'm going to have in quotes John, in quote, comma, Daniel, okay, in quotes, comma, I'm going to have Sarah in quote as well. Then I'm going to close my curly bracket. So you can actually tell the clear difference between the Python list and the Python set. Okay, also we have what we call the Python tuple. The Python tuple, let me just say that the clear difference between the Python list and the Python set is that the Python list is enclosed by a square bracket and the Python set is enclosed by a curly bracket. Then Python list, Python set, and Python tuples are similar. Okay, they are similar. Then we have the Python tuple, for instance, we have the Python tuple here. Okay, Python tuple, you should know the difference between all these. Python tuple, I'm going to just say name as well, like we have there in the two other cases, equals to, this time around, the brackets. Okay, I'll see how the same thing I have in other brackets, others. Okay, comma, this Daniel, comma, this Sarah. Okay, then I'll close my bracket. Alright, so you should be able to tell the difference clearly. In the Python list, we have our name enclosed in the square bracket, and then in the Python set, you have our names enclosed in a curly bracket. In the Python tuple, you have all the names as well enclosed in a bracket. Now, there are differences in all this. We can actually access items, but we are going to look at that subsequently in our subsequent classes. But I want you for now to pay attention and go through everything we have actually discussed today. Then you're going to also make research. You need to study ahead beyond this class. If there are questions, just write them down so that when we come back to the class, we'll treat all those questions. Yes. So once again, I want to say good morning, and for now, this is how far we can go for today. And we hope to meet in our next class. Thank you very much, and God bless you all. Thank you.